Hello and welcome to the Business Standard Morning Show. I'm Kanishka Gupta. It's the 28th of August 2023 and here are the questions we will be answering today. How will the Brics expansion affect India? Is Shimla the next Joshimath? What factors will guide markets this week? And what is Brics? Brics is set to onboard 6 new nations, including 2 major oil producers, Saudi Arabia and the UAE. China, a key player in the bloc and biggest oil importer, is said to have cited the threat of a new Cold War as one of the reasons for this expansion. And experts believe that the expansion may have both economic and political ramifications. So, where does India stand in all this? How will this development affect it? And what will be its effect on global trade and geoeconomics? Bhaswar Kumar and Kasturi Akhil bring you the answers.
The leading 5-member alliance of the developing world, BRICS, may have to scout for a new name. 6 new members are set to join the club starting January 1st, 2024. At the BRICS summit on August 24th in Johannesburg, member nations Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa decided to include 6 new members to the group. The objective of the expansion was to widen the alliance with powerful developing economies, thereby strengthening the voice of the developing world in the global arena. The new entries include Argentina, Egypt, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Ethiopia, and the United Arab Emirates. After the expansion, BRICS representation of the world's population will rise to about 50% from the earlier 40%. The new alliance may boost prospects of intra-BRICS trade in local currencies. The new members include the world's biggest oil-producing countries, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Iran. Meanwhile, India is the world's 3rd largest importer of crude oil. Against this backdrop, as China is seen to be the driving force behind the expansion, and given India's tense ties with the country, how will the expansion affect India?
The new entrants are not countries which are hostile to India, and therefore we should not have any major reservations about this. With regard to China being the main driver, so I think that also I would say we should not ascribe this to China doing something very devious, to the extent that BRICS provides a platform for expanded cooperation with some of the existing and some of the new members. That's a plus for India. What we are able to do is maybe swap lines amongst one another. What we are able to do is to have trade with each other using local currencies. But this is already being done, BRICS or no BRICS. The issue of having an alternate currency system is rather unlikely, because international currencies like the US dollar are international currencies because they are freely convertible. They are there is no capital controls on the transfer of money. Until we get to that point, I'm afraid that a BRICS currency cannot serve as an alternative, international currency. So that should be fairly clear. Yes, they can make a contribution with regard to development finance, because we have the BRICS Development Bank. And if you have a country like Saudi Arabia or the UAE coming in, that at least potentially could expand the resources that are available to the development bank. And, that obviously can also be accessed by India for its own developmental projects.
Look, India has had relations with every one of those 6 countries which have been invited. In fact, if I may point out to you, in terms of pure diplomacy, we started having diplomatic relations with almost all of them before China started having relations with them. Of course, things have changed. The reality of China is known to all of us. And therefore, we have to adjust to this particular reality. But these are countries with whom we have friendly relations. We have growing trade ties. The way I look at it is, there was a necessity. It was a kind of imperative that was coming about. Our being there is a very important sign, and the countries will also continue to look to India for a kind of guidance. One of the things that we will have to be mindful is how the rest of the global south looks at this coming together of the largest countries in the global south. In terms of the way geopolitics plays out at the UN and in multilateral fora, the G7 possibility has the possibility of, if I may say so, putting a bit of a wedge between us and the global south. We'll have to play this game, let me say, carefully with due calibration and letting all others know that we are solidly members of the global south and with everyone in the global south community, including that large conglomeration called the Group of 77.
The news has also raised fresh debates about whether the new grouping would now emerge as an outright rival to the West, and moreover as a counterblock to the G7. The G7 comprises the world's most advanced economies, namely the US, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the UK. The US, which is the strongest G7 economy, emerged as India's biggest trading partner in FY23. International Monetary Fund data that analyzes GDP based on purchasing power of different currencies reveals that while the contribution of Brics nations to global GDP has seen a rise between 1982 and 2022, the share of the G7 has steadily declined. Going ahead, what will be the implications of the expansion for industry, global trade, and the emergence of a larger economic bloc that could perhaps become a counter to the G7?
The BRICS has been in existence for some time, and with the exception of the development bank, I have not seen any substantive economic cooperation at the BRICS level. Now, with the addition of some of the new members, will this change? That remains to be seen. And let us not look at the G7 and the BRICS as two sort of competing blocks, for the simple reason that the G7 has countries which have a certain ideological affinity. And they have, a basic convergence of views with regard to geopolitics. And also, of course, these are major market economies. They are the major markets. They have the financial markets. Now, if you compare that to the BRICS, I think we still have a long way to go. And we already know that there are, different perspectives, different interests that countries of the BRICS have. The kind of, coherence which the G7 has, that coherence will probably be, achieved, if ever, after a long time. And long time of close cooperation. So I do not see that equivalence.
I don't want to see this as any kind of counter, but I certainly want to see it as larger countries in the global south coming together collaboratively to see what can be done. Now, this is, of course, a matter of whatever you may say, developing your own currency strengths, seeing what you can do in terms of trade, what can you do in terms of investments, etc. But let us also be cognizant of things as they currently stand. The United States, Japan, Canada, and the European Union together actually account for more than 50% of global GDP, no matter the very small way in which we do the totaling that the BRICS seems to go ahead. Also, they continue to be the large purveyors of both technology and investable funds. No matter what we talk about China, that isn't their situation as of now. Therefore, in the near and foreseeable future, I frankly think that the importance of engaging with the G7 countries, the larger economies in the world, and those with technological and financial heft will remain important and is something that all countries, I believe, in the BRICS, and I want to stress here, including China, would have an interest in carrying on.
India need not be overtly worried about China's role in the expansion, since the new entrants are friendly countries. However, given its significant ties with both G7 and the Global South, India will want to ensure that the expansion is viewed in the correct context, that it is another sign of India's commitment to a multipolar world.
Nature, meanwhile, is slowly crafting a different sort of world order which is not very pleasant and does not understand boundaries. Effects of climate change are more visible now than ever before. Hundreds of families were recently forced to evacuate after their houses in hill station Joshimath developed cracks. Hundreds of homes and hotels in Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand have collapsed in landslides in the last 2 months. Clearly, the fragile Himalayan foothills are paying the price of unbridled constructions. Shimla too has turned into a concrete jungle. So, is the Queen of Hills heading the Joshimath way? Ayush Mishra talks to experts to come up with answer.
Rain breaks the summer spell, offers us some good moments to introspect over a cup of tea. But at times, it offers us moments of reckoning too. Visuals and video clips of collapsing houses and hotels have been inundating social media platforms and news channels since the onset of monsoon this year. Tourism in hill states of Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh has come to a grinding halt and normal life to a standstill. Hills are paying the price for unplanned and unregulated development, and so are the locals. Last year, when the hill on which Joshimath town is pinned started to sink, hundreds of locals were forced to leave their homes. Over 25% of the town area has been affected. Some blamed a nearby hydroelectric project for this, but authorities dismissed it. About 500 kilometers away from Joshimath, another hill town is now bursting at the seams. Shimla was made summer capital by the then British government in 1864. And according to a report, the population growth was a cause of concern even then. The town's population was around 24,000 in 1889, with 20,779 Indians, whose number had grown to 29,048 by 1898, a jump of 40%. In her paper Urban History of Shimla, historian Pamela Kanwar said that the then census report had raised the spectre of an overcrowded Shimla. In the 2011 census, Shimla city's population was 171,640. According to police, over 60,000 vehicles remain parked on the roadsides during peak summer season, and around 26,000 vehicles enter the city during the weekend. According to the draft development plan, in the 70s, Shimla was planned to accommodate a population of 25,000. However, the current population stands at 2.4 lakh, and the influx of additional tourists has compounded the strain on the city.
The building norms in Shimla have been severely and outrightly being violated. NGT orders have been violated, and the constructions have happened on the path, the drainage path. So, on the nalas, on the drainage path, on high degree slopes, all of these construction norms are wrong to the very core. So now, it has been very convenient exercise now that every time a disaster is happening, it is conveniently put onto climate change. Everything is not basically because of climate change. Yes, climate change is a reality. And in the times of climate change, the water is going to reclaim its place. So you have you really need the water to have a free movement. If you are encroaching the water pathways, if you are encroaching the nalas, if you are encroaching the movement of the groundwaters, it will ooze out. It will loosen this, it will drag the soil with it. And with it, your buildings and your constructions are going to come collapsing.
In February 2022, the state government came out with a draft development plan for 2041 to make the city congestion-free. It had claimed that the draft plan would help in the planned development of Shimla. But in October, NGT restrained the government from giving effect to the draft plan, saying it was in conflict with the Green Tribunal's November 2017 order.
Both the state and the central government are the key policy makers here. So the state government, in fact, can you imagine? It had the whole Shimla development plan has been put on hold by the NGT. Otherwise, if given to the state, the Shimla would have been at another level of violation. In fact, 2017 NGT's order kept SDP on hold. Otherwise, SDP was to be implemented, and if Shimla development plan was to be implemented, then all the construction in the world would have been possible.
The National Green Tribunal Performance Audit Report said that a staggering 83% of vital structures in Shimla, known as lifeline buildings, were unsafe. These lifeline buildings encompass critical infrastructure such as police stations, fire stations, hospitals, powerhouses, and others which serve as essential emergency response units during time of disasters. So what is the way forward?
In the NGT report, they have actually given a detailed list of recommendations. And what we really need to do is, and all of those recommendations really make sense, what we really need to do is to divide those tasks across various government departments, give them specific responsibility in the short term of achieving certain things, be it solid waste management, be it traffic congestion, be it parking management, which would also mean that we have to strengthen our urban local bodies, both in terms of financing, also by giving them powers. We need to take a sort of almost sort of work on a mission base to really save the city.
Clearly, alarm bells are ringing. State government will have to strike a delicate balance between development and environmental conservation, or nature has its own way of dealing with things, like what we witnessed in Joshimath.
After the hills, let us see what is happening in financial markets. India's key benchmark indices, the Sensex and the Nifty, ended lower for the fifth straight week, as investors remain wary of cues from the Jackson Hole Economic Symposium over the weekend. Lavisha Darad and Rex Cano share insights into the three key events that are likely to provide direction to the markets in the week ahead.
Equity markets underwent volatile moves last week amid fresh spike in bond yields, inflation jitters, and somber listing of geofinancial services. Benchmark indices, the S&P BSE Sensex and Nifty 50, ended with marginal losses in the week gone by, while broader indices gained up to 2.2%. Last week, India's 10-year bond yield was up at 7.24% in Friday's intraday trade after the minutes of RBI's August policy meeting reiterated inflation concerns. That apart, losses in shares of Mukesh Ambani-led Reliance Industries and muted debut of its demerged arm, Geofinancial Services, also weighed on the market sentiment. While Reliance slipped 3.4%, Geofinancial's hit 5% lower circuit in all 5 trading sessions last week, and eventually 19% lower as against its pre-discovered price of Rs 261.85 per share. As we enter this week, all eyes will be on the Reliance Annual General Meeting on Monday, August 28th. Analysts expect announcements from the AGM to influence decisive moves in the market. Along with that, India's GDP figures and monsoon progress will also act as key triggers.
We expect GDP growth rate of around 8% for the first quarter. But inflation is becoming a major concern now. Poor performance of monsoons in August also is a matter of concern. So there is a danger of inflation spiking beyond RBI's comfort zone. This week, Reliance message from the AGM will be keenly watched by the market. Reliance and HDFC Bank together account for more than 20% of weightage in the Nifty, and therefore movement in these two stocks will largely determine the direction of the Nifty also.
That apart, investors will also watch out for the monthly F&O expiry due Thursday. Technically, analysts expect Nifty to settle below 19,500 this August series.
As we approach the monthly expiry, the markets are likely to be volatile. We have already seen in the month of August that the markets have corrected from the higher levels. Now 19,500 continues to be a strong resistance for the market. We have seen good amount of call writing happening at those levels. On the lower end, the immediate support is at 19,250, and if we breach that level, we expect markets to go lower towards 19,000 levels as well. So the monthly expiry remains bearish. I don't expect Nifty to expire above the level of 19,500. Coming back to the September series for the next, if Nifty breach that support of 19,250 on a closing basis, we expect markets to slide further down towards 18,900 levels. That is the next support level what we get on the Nifty. From there onwards, you can at least get a pullback or a relief rally, which could take the index further higher towards 19,200. So if I talk about September series, 18,900 to 19,500 could be a range in which Nifty would be trading.
That said, markets on Monday, August 28, are likely to take cues from global counterparts as they react to the Fed chief speech at Jackson Hole Symposium.
He's making plans for an early retirement. Business Standard.
Interestingly, Goldman Sachs recently said that India will overtake the US to become the world's second largest economy by 2075. Moving on, it was Goldman Sachs which has coined the term BRIC, whose summit recently ended in Johannesburg. But exactly what is BRICS? Rimjim Singh has more on it. BRICS, an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is a group of 5 major emerging economies that have come together to foster international collaboration across various key sectors. Formed in 2006, BRICS was initially marked for highlighting investment opportunities and had not been a formal intergovernmental organization. In 2009, they formed a more cohesive geopolitical bloc, and their governments held annual meetings at formal summits. The inaugural BRICS summit was held in 2009, and these nations recognized their shared interests and common challenges. This laid the foundation for regular meetings, setting the stage for deeper cooperation. The term BRIC was coined by Goldman Sachs economist Jim O'Neill in 2001 to highlight the economic potential of Brazil, Russia, India, and China. South Africa joined the group in 2010, transforming it into BRICS. The BRICS nations have about 26.7% of the world's land surface and 41.5% of the global population. The BRICS economies represent a significant portion of the global GDP and trade. They work on enhancing economic ties through trade agreements, investment partnerships, and the promotion of intra-BRICS trade. According to World Bank data in 2019, they represent about 16% of international trade. The grouping acts as a platform for these nations to discuss political and strategic issues of mutual concern, including global security, regional stability, and international governance reform. The BRICS emphasizes cooperation in science, technology, and innovation, facilitating joint research and knowledge sharing. The 5 countries advocate the reform of international institutions such as the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank to represent the interests of emerging economies. Currently, the New Development Bank, sometimes referred to as the BRICS Development Bank, and the Contingent Reserve Arrangement make up the financial architecture of BRICS. Both entities were signed into the treaty in 2014, and they became active in 2015. The New Development Bank provides funding for infrastructure and development projects in BRICS nations and other emerging economies.
The new development bank operates on a subscription-based model, with each member contributing to the bank's capital and having an equal say in its functioning. The contingent reserve arrangement is a framework that protects against global liquidity pressures.
I'm backed by the nation's trusted bank, SBI, the banker to every Indian.
Combined nominal GDP of the 5 G20 members is $28.06 trillion, which is about 26% of the world's GDP. Well, that's all for today. For more such news, views, and insights, follow and subscribe to Business Standard.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views, and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, and LinkedIn.